In the heart of rural America, where traditions run as deep as the soil itself, Harold Wheeler's weathered hands tell a story of 60 years of farming. For decades, his produce stand was the crown jewel of Cedar Grove's town market, until one fateful morning when a new ordinance banned him from selling there. His crime? Refusing to conform to modern packaging standards that went against everything he believed about natural farming. But just when it seemed the 73-year-old's livelihood was slipping away, something extraordinary happened. 3 black helicopters descended onto his cornfield, kicking up dust and speculation throughout the valley. What those helicopters brought with them would change not just Harold's life, but the fate of the entire town. Before we dive deeper into this incredible story, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this touches your heart, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Dawn broke over Cedar Grove, in shades of amber and rose, finding Harold Wheeler already awake in his kitchen. He stood at the worn counter, wrapping fresh lettuce heads in brown paper, the way he had for over half a century. His arthritic fingers moved with practiced precision, each twist and fold a testament to decades of muscle memory. The morning light caught the faded sign hanging above his sink. Wheeler Family Farms, Esther, 1963, hand-painted by his father when Harold was just a boy. Through the window, he could see the early morning mist clinging to his fields, the crops still wet with dew. The timing had to be perfect. Vegetables picked at dawn stayed fresh longer, retained more flavor. That's what his father had taught him, and what he'd taught Sarah, his granddaughter, who now helped run the farm, but was away at a sustainable agriculture conference this week. If only she were here today. Harold glanced at the official notice. Propped against his coffee mug, its crisp white paper and government letterhead, a stark contrast to his weathered kitchen. Final warning. Compliance required by market date 6/15/25. The words might as well have been written in poison. Standardized plastic packaging, he muttered, shaking his head as he continued wrapping his produce. Might as well wrap sunshine in cellophane. His truck, a '92 Ford that had seen better days, waited outside, bed already half loaded with wooden crates. Each contained carefully arranged vegetables, heirloom tomatoes still warm from the vine, crisp cucumbers, sweet bell peppers in rainbow. Years. The morning routine was as natural as breathing. Check each item, arrange them just so, protect the delicate ones at the bottom of the crates. The drive into town was familiar as his own heartbeat. 20 minutes of country roads, past the Andersons' dairy farm, around the bend where old Miller's place used to be, before the developer bought it. Harold's hands gripped the steering wheel tighter. Change was coming to Cedar Grove. Whether they wanted it or not, the town market had already begun stirring when he arrived, vendors setting up their stalls in the pre-dawn quiet. Harold's spot, prime location, corner of Main and Maple, had been his for 40 years. Margaret Chen, who sold flowers 2 stalls down, gave him a sad wave as he began unloading. "Heard about the notice, Harold," she said, adjusting a bucket. "Of sunflowers. It's not right what they're doing." Harold managed a tight smile. "Way of the world now, Margaret. Everything wrapped in plastic, sealed away from the air itself." He had just finished arranging his 3rd crate when he heard the click-clack of dress shoes on pavement. Dennis Whitaker, the new health inspector, strode toward him with clipboard in hand and 2 market officials trailing behind. At 30-something, Whitaker was younger than Harold's favorite hoe, with a pressed shirt that had never seen a day's. "Real work, Mr. Wheeler," Whitaker called out, voice carrying across the market. "I trust you've reviewed the compliance notice?" Harold straightened slowly, his back protesting the movement. "Been farming longer than you've been breathing, Mr. Whitaker. Never needed plastic wrap to sell good produce." "The regulations are clear." Whitaker's pen tapped against his clipboard. "All produce must be packaged in approved materials with proper labeling. Your traditional methods don't meet current health standards." Around them, other vendors had stopped their morning preparations, watching the confrontation unfold. Harold could feel their eyes, smell their discomfort mixing with the morning dew and fresh vegetables. "These tomatoes were in the ground yesterday," Harold said, holding up one of his prized Cherokee purples. "Picked them myself at first light. People come from 3 counties over for these. Without proper packaging, we can't verify handling procedures." Whitaker's voice took on the practiced tone of someone who'd rehearsed their lines. "The ordinance is non-negotiable. I'll have to ask you to pack up your non-compliant items." Harold's fingers tightened around the tomato. 60 years of farming, of working the land his father had worked before him, reduced to non-compliant items. He looked at his vegetables, at the morning sun playing across their natural colors, at the wooden crates his grandson had helped him build last summer. "My customers know what they're buying," he said quietly. "Know where it comes from, how it's grown. That's worth more than any plastic wrapper. Pack it up, Mr. Wheeler." Whitaker's tone left no room for argument. "Or we'll have to issue a citation." The market had fallen silent. Even the early morning birds seemed to hold their song. Harold looked at his stand, at the careful arrangement of produce that would never make it to his customers' tables. Slowly, methodically, he began returning vegetables to their crates. Margaret approached with an empty bucket. "Let me help, Harold." "No," he said, voice rough. "This is my doing, my responsibility." It took 20 minutes to pack everything away, each moment weighted with the eyes of the market upon him. As he loaded the last crate onto his truck, Whitaker approached with a final paper, an official ban from the market until compliance could be verified. Harold took it without a word, climbed into his truck, and drove away from the spot he'd occupied for 40 years. In his rearview mirror, he could see Whitaker already measuring the space for a new vendor, someone who would sell their produce wrapped in plastic and labeled with barcodes. The drive home seemed longer, the familiar. Roads somehow changed. His father's voice echoed in his memory. "The land knows how to give, son. Our job is just to listen and learn." Harold wondered what the old man would say about plastic-wrapped vegetables and government regulations. Back at the farm, Harold unloaded the rejected produce with careful hands. Nothing would go to waste. The food bank would welcome it, plastic-free as it was. As he placed the last crate in his cooler, his eyes fell on the farm sign again. Wheeler Family Farms, still standing, proud after all these years. "Times change," he murmured to the empty barn, "but the soil remains." He didn't know then that in less than a week those black helicopters would appear over his cornfield, bringing with them a change that would shake Cedar Grove to its foundations. For now, there was only the quiet of his farm, the weight of the ban notice in his pocket, and the eternal question of what tomorrow might bring. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across Harold's kitchen table, where he sat studying an old leather-bound photo album. His daughter Rachel had put it together years ago before cancer took her too soon, leaving Sarah in his and Martha's care. Now, with Martha gone 3 years and Sarah away at her conference, the quiet of the house pressed in around him. His fingers traced a photograph from 1965, his father standing proud at their first market stall, Harold himself just a teenager. Beside him, the wooden sign they'd made together hung above their heads, the same one that now weathered the seasons above his sink. In the next photo, Martha held baby Rachel at the market, their produce arranged in the same wooden crates he still used. Today, the ring of his landline phone startled him from his reverie. Sarah's number flashed on the caller ID. "Grandpa? Mom Chen just called me about what happened." Sarah's voice carried that familiar mix of concern and determination she'd inherited from Rachel. "I'm coming home. You stay put," Harold said firmly. "That conference is important for your future." "The farm is my future," Sarah countered. "And they can't just ban you like that. There have to be appeal procedures, grandfather clauses." "Sarah," Harold's tone softened, "your mother would want you focusing on your studies right now. The farm will still be here when you get back." A pause filled the line. "At least let me post about this online. People should know what's happening to local farmers." Harold sighed. Social media was Sarah's territory. She'd been trying to get him to modernize their marketing for years. Do what you think is right, sweetheart. Just keep it respectful. After hanging up, Harold walked out to check his fields. The afternoon light painted his crops in gold, rows of vegetables stretching toward the horizon. Near the north field, something caught his eye. A patch of soil that looked different from the rest. He'd noticed it last week, but hadn't given it much thought. Kneeling down, Harold scooped up a handful of the peculiar earth. The texture was unusual, almost crystalline, with strange dark flecks scattered throughout. In 40 years of working this land, he'd never seen anything quite like it. "Harold," a voice called from the road. Margaret Chen was walking up his driveway, carrying what looked like a pie tin. "Thought you might need some company," she said, as she got closer, "and my mother's recipe for apple pie never hurt anyone's spirits." They sat on Harold's porch, the pie settling between them on an old wooden table. Margaret had been one of Martha's closest friends, and her presence carried echoes of easier days. "How's the flower business?" Harold asked, accepting a slice. "Holding on." Margaret's eyes crinkled. "Though Whitaker's been making noise about proper stem packaging lately, man wouldn't know a daisy from a dandelion." Harold showed her the soil sample he'd collected. "Ever seen anything like this?" Margaret adjusted her glasses, studying the crystalline particles. "Not in my garden. Have you tested it?" "Never needed to test my soil before. Always let the crops tell me what they needed." "Times are changing, old friend." Margaret's voice was gentle. "Maybe we need to change too. Just enough to keep going, not so much we lose ourselves." As if to punctuate her words, a truck pulled into Harold's driveway. Ted Morrison from the local agriculture extension office. Ted had been helping farmers in the county since before Harold's father's time. "Heard about the market?" Ted called as he approached the porch. "Load of nonsense, if you ask me, but that's not why I'm here." He gestured to Harold's north field. "One of our soil surveyors reported some unusual readings from your property last month. Mind if I take a look?" Harold led Ted to the patch of strange soil, Margaret following behind. Ted knelt down, collecting samples in small plastic vials, and the irony of which wasn't lost on Harold. "This is interesting," Ted muttered, holding a vial up to the light. "Mind if I send these to the university lab?" "What's so special about it?" Harold asked. Ted pocketed the samples. "Could be nothing. But if it's what I think it is, well, let's wait for the results." After Ted left, Margaret helped Harold water his greenhouse seedlings. The routine task was comforting, even as questions about the soil nagged at him. His father had always said their land was special, but he'd assumed that was just a father's pride talking. That evening, Harold found himself back at the kitchen table, photo album open. He flipped to the last page, a picture from just last summer. Sarah stood in the north field, arms full of fresh-picked vegetables, grinning at the camera. Behind her, that same patch of peculiar soil was visible, though he hadn't noticed it then. His cell phone buzzed. Sarah had sent a link to her social media post about the market ban. The comments were already flowing in, long-time customers expressing outrage, other farmers sharing similar stories, young people Harold had never met pledging to support traditional farming methods. Looking from the phone to the photo album to the notice of ban still sitting on his counter, Harold felt something shift inside him. Maybe Margaret was right. The trick wasn't refusing to change, but finding a way to change that honored what mattered most. He picked up his father's old journal from the bookshelf, its pages yellow with age. Inside the cover, his father's handwriting remained clear. "The land gives up its secrets in its own time. Our job is to be patient, to listen, and to learn." Harold glanced out his window at the north field, now silvered by moonlight. Something was happening on his farm. Something beyond banned produce and plastic packaging. He just had to be patient enough to understand what it was, and wise enough to know what to do when he did. The soil analysis report arrived on a Tuesday morning, carried by a team of researchers from the state university who showed up unannounced in Harold's driveway. Their sleek SUVs looked out of place among his weathered farm equipment, like smartphones. At an antique show, Mr. Wheeler? A woman in her 50s stepped forward, extending her hand. I'm Dr. Elena Rodriguez, head of agricultural sciences. This is quite extraordinary. Harold studied the document she handed him. Charts, graphs, and scientific terms danced across the page, but one phrase stood out: unprecedented mineral composition. In plain English, Dr. Rodriguez, Harold said, looking up from the report. She smiled, pushing her glasses up. Your soil contains a unique combination of minerals we've never seen before. The crystalline structures suggest... She caught herself, switching to simpler terms. Mr. Wheeler, your crops aren't just organic. They're growing in soil that could revolutionize natural farming. The research team spread out across his north field like a flock of curious birds, taking samples and photographs. Harold watched them from his porch, coffee cup cooling in his hands. Dr. Rodriguez sat beside him, explaining how the minerals in his soil enhanced nutrient absorption and pest resistance naturally. Your father never mentioned anything unusual. About the land, she asked. Harold's mind wandered to his father's old journal, to cryptic notes about keeping the land pure. He always said our soil was special, thought he was just being proud. He knew, Dr. Rodriguez said softly. The mineral composition shows decades of careful preservation. No chemical fertilizers, no heavy machinery in certain areas. He was protecting it. A young researcher jogged up to the porch, tablet in hand. Dr. Rodriguez, you need to see these readings. The mineral concentration increases dramatically below surface level. Harold followed them to the field, where ground-penetrating radar revealed what looked like veins of the mineral-rich soil stretching deep into the earth. The scientists' excitement was palpable, their technical discussions floating around him. Like leaves in the wind. Mr. Wheeler, Dr. Rodriguez turned to him. Would you be willing to participate in a research study? The implications for sustainable agriculture are enormous. Before Harold could answer, a black SUV pulled into his driveway. Ted Morrison stepped out, looking anxious. Harold, he called out, hurrying over. I see they found you already. I was hoping to give you some warning. He nodded to Dr. Rodriguez. Word's getting out about the mineral deposits. You're going to have more visitors soon. As if on cue, Harold's phone rang. Sarah. Grandpa, have you seen the university's post? They're calling it a breakthrough in sustainable agriculture. Her voice crackled with excitement. I'm coming. Home today. This changes everything. Harold looked at his field, now dotted with researchers and equipment. Seems everything's changing whether we're ready or not. That's not all, Sarah continued. People are sharing our story about the market ban alongside the university's announcement. The timing is perfect. It shows exactly why traditional farming methods matter. After hanging up, Harold retreated to his greenhouse, seeking comfort. Among his seedlings, Dr. Rodriguez found him there, gently touching the leaves of young tomato plants. Your vegetables, she said. They've been absorbing these minerals all along. It explains their exceptional quality, their resistance to disease. You've been growing something extraordinary without even knowing it. Harold thought of all the customers at the market who'd praised his produce over the years, who'd sworn his vegetables tasted better than any others. Nature knows what it's doing, he said quietly, if we just listen. The afternoon brought more visitors. Local news. Reporters drawn by the university's announcement. Harold watched from his kitchen window as Dr. Rodriguez handled their questions, keeping the details vague but the excitement clear. Sarah arrived as the sun was setting, her car kicking up dust on the driveway. She hugged Harold fiercely before, pulling out her laptop, showing him the explosion of online interest in their farm. Look, she said, scrolling through comments. People are making connections between the mineral discovery and traditional farming methods. They're questioning the new market regulations. Even the mayor's office released a statement saying they'll review the packaging requirements. Harold stood at his sink, looking out at the north field, now quiet in the evening light. The university's equipment cast long shadows, marking the land like modern standing stones. His father's sign hung above him, and for a moment he could swear he heard the old man's voice. "The land knows how to give, son. Our job is just to listen and learn." "Grandpa," Sarah touched his arm. "What are you thinking?" "Thinking about your mother," he said softly. "How she always said this land was magic. Thinking about your grandmother, how she knew every inch of these fields by heart." He turned to Sarah. "Thinking about you, carrying on what they started." Sarah's eyes glistened. "We're going to protect it, Grandpa. Do it right." Late that night, after Sarah had gone to bed, Harold sat at his kitchen table with his father's journal. He found an entry from 1963, written just after they'd bought the farm. "The soil here is different, special. Folks might not understand now, but someday they will. Until then, we farm it gentle, keep it pure. Some secrets need time to grow." Harold closed the journal, feeling the weight of his father's wisdom settling around him like a familiar coat. Tomorrow would bring more changes. He could feel them coming like weather on the wind, but tonight he had the comfort of knowing that his father's secret was finally being understood, that the land's voice was finally being heard. Through his window, the north field stretched out under starlight, its hidden treasures now known but somehow still mysterious. Harold smiled, remembering what he'd told that young health inspector about wrapping sunshine in cellophane. Some things, it seemed, were too precious for packaging. The helicopters came at noon. Harold was checking the irrigation lines when he heard them, 3 black shapes cutting across the cloudless sky. They descended onto his cornfield with military precision, their rotors whipping the stalks into wild patterns. Sarah burst out of the house, phone already recording. "Grandpa, are you seeing this?" The lead helicopter's door opened before the dust had settled. A man in an expensive suit stepped out, his leather shoes incongruous against the farm soil. Behind him came 2 more suits, a woman with a tablet, and what looked like a security detail. "Mr. Wheeler." The lead man approached, somehow managing to look immaculate despite the dust. "Jackson Hayes, CEO of Agritech Solutions." He extended a business card that gleamed like a mirror in the sunlight. "We need to talk about your land." Harold studied the card. Agritech Solutions, the largest agricultural technology company in North America. Their logo was on half the farming equipment catalogs he recycled without opening. "My office is out here," Harold said, gesturing to the fields around them. "Say what you came to say." Hayes smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "The mineral composition of your soil represents a unique opportunity. We're prepared to make you a very generous offer for your property." "Not interested." Harold turned. Back to his irrigation line. "Mr. Wheeler," the woman with the tablet stepped forward. "Perhaps we should discuss numbers before you decide." She held out a document with a figure that made Sarah gasp. Harold didn't even look at it. "Land's not for sale." "Your farm could revolutionize modern agriculture," Hayes pressed. "Think bigger than organic vegetables. We're talking about patented soil compounds, specialized fertilizers, worldwide distribution." "Patented soil?" Harold's voice carried a dangerous edge. "You want to patent what nature made?" Sarah moved closer to her grandfather, phone still recording. "Our soil's special because it's been preserved naturally for generations. You can't mass-produce that in a lab." Hayes turned his calculated smile on her. "Miss Wheeler, I assume. We've seen your social media posts. Very impressive engagement numbers. We could offer you a position in our marketing department, help you reach a much larger audience." "Not interested," Sarah echoed her grandfather's words. A sleek town car pulled up to the farm then, and Harold recognized Mayor Thompson's driver. The mayor emerged, straightening his tie as he hurried over. "Harold, I came as soon as I heard Agritech was here." He tried to catch his breath. "As mayor, I feel I should be part of any discussions about Cedar Grove's future." Hayes nodded approvingly. "Mayor Thompson and I have already had several productive conversations about modernizing local agriculture." "Bet you have." Harold muttered, thinking of his market ban. The mayor had the grace to look uncomfortable. About that market situation, Harold. Perhaps we were too hasty. With these new developments, we could revisit the packaging requirements. How? Generous, Sarah said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. Now that corporate money's involved, suddenly traditional farming methods aren't so bad. Dr. Rodriguez's university SUV appeared on the road, adding to the impromptu gathering. She emerged with a concerned expression, taking in the helicopters. "En suits, Mr. Wheeler," she called out, hurrying over. "I've been trying to call. The mineral analysis is proprietary university research," Hayes cut in smoothly. "We've already been in contact with your department head." Elena's face darkened. "This is ecological research, not corporate property. Everything's corporate. Property eventually." Hayes smiled. "It's just a matter of price." Harold had heard enough. He walked to his porch steps and turned to face the assembled group. The afternoon sun caught the silver in his hair, and something in his stance made everyone fall silent. "My father bought this land in 1963, he began, voice carrying across the yard. "Back then, folks thought he was crazy, paying extra for soil that looked different, but he knew something they didn't. Something about listening to the land instead of trying to control it." He looked at the helicopters squatting in his cornfield. "You want to patent soil that took nature thousands of years to create. Want to package it up neat and tidy, sell it to farmers whose land you've already stripped bare with your chemicals and your modern methods." Hayes started to speak, but Harold held up a hand. "I'm not finished. That market ban wasn't about food safety. It was about control, making everything fit in nice plastic boxes with barcodes and patents, but some things don't fit in boxes. Mr. Wheeler," Hayes said carefully, "you have an opportunity to be part of agricultural history." "Already am," Harold replied. "Been part of it for 60 years, and I aim to keep it that way." A crowd had begun gathering at Harold's gate. Market vendors, local farmers, townspeople drawn by the helicopters. Margaret Chen's flour truck pulled up, and she pushed through to stand beside Harold. "The market's not the same without your vegetables," she announced loudly. "My customers keep asking when you're coming back." More voices joined in, sharing stories about Harold's produce, about generations of Wheeler farming. Sarah's phone captured it all, live streaming to an audience that grew by the minute. Hayes's smile had turned brittle. "People are sentimental, Mr. Wheeler, but sentiment doesn't feed the world." "No," Harold agreed. "Good farming feeds the world. Real soil feeds the world, not patents and plastic." The mayor was looking increasingly nervous as more townspeople arrived. "Perhaps we should continue this discussion at City Hall." "Nothing to discuss," Harold said firmly. "My land's not for sale. Not to Agritech, not to anyone." Hayes handed Harold another business card. "When you're ready to be reasonable, call me. But don't wait too long. Opportunities like this, they have a way of disappearing." The threat hung in the air like the dust from the helicopters, which soon lifted off, carrying Hayes and his entourage away. The mayor made a quick exit, leaving Harold, Sarah, and Eleanor standing with the growing crowd of supporters. "This isn't over," Sarah said, finally lowering her phone. Harold watched the helicopters disappear into the distance. "No," he agreed, "but neither are we." That evening, as the sun set behind his fields, Harold stood in the north field, where it all began. The soil that had sustained his family for generations now held secrets that powerful men wanted to own. But as he watched the fading light play across his land, he knew some things were beyond owning. They were beyond packaging, too. Cedar Grove's town hall hadn't seen a crowd this size since the great zoning debate of '98. Every wooden bench was packed, with people standing along the walls and spilling out into the hallway. The emergency town council meeting had been called, less than 24 hours after the helicopters left Wheeler Farm, but news traveled fast in small towns. Harold sat in the front row between Sarah and Margaret Chen, watching Mayor Thompson shuffle papers at his podium. The council members arranged themselves with studied casualness, though their darting glances betrayed their nervousness. "Order, please," Mayor Thompson called out, tapping his gavel. "We're here to discuss the recent developments regarding Wheeler Farm and their implications for our community." "You mean you're here to explain why you banned Harold's produce right before Agritech showed up?" someone called from the back. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. The mayor tugged at his collar. The market regulations were implemented, purely for public health reasons. "Funny timing, though, isn't it?" Margaret stood up, her voice clear and strong. 40 years of Harold's vegetables keeping us healthy. Then suddenly they're unsafe, right when a big corporation gets interested in his land. Sarah's laptop was open, live streaming the meeting to hundreds of viewers. The chat scroll moved so fast it was almost a blur. "The timing is unfortunate," Council Member Davis admitted, earning a sharp look from the mayor. "Perhaps we should review the packaging requirements." "Review isn't enough," Ted Morrison spoke up from his seat. "I've got soil reports showing Wheeler Farm's produce is more nutritious than anything in the county. Been that way for years. We should be promoting it, not banning it." Health Inspector Whitaker rose from his corner seat, clipboard clutched like a shield. "Regulations exist for a reason. Yeah, to help corporations push out small farmers." This came from young Bobby Chen, Margaret's son, who ran an organic bakery downtown. The mayor banged his gavel again. "Please, this is a civil discourse about our future," Harold finished, standing slowly. The room fell silent. "This isn't just about my farm or my market stall. It's about who we want to be as a community." He turned to face the crowd, seeing faces he'd known all his life. "That's soil on my land. It's special because it's been cared for, respected. You can't package that in plastic, can't put it in a corporate box. The minute we start trying, we lose something precious." Sarah's livestream chat exploded with supportive comments. Local news cameras whirred in the back of the room. "The market ban will be suspended pending review," Mayor Thompson announced, quickly reading the room. "And any corporate development proposals will require extensive community consultation." "They'll be back," Harold said quietly, but his voice carried. "Agritech, or someone like them, with more helicopters, bigger offers, smoother threats. The question is, will we be ready?" A new voice spoke up, Claire Anderson from the dairy farm. "We could form a farmers' coalition, protect our traditional methods together." "The university would support that," Dr. Rodriguez added from her seat near the wall. "Our preliminary research suggests the mineral properties in Harold's soil might be present in other local farms, just in smaller concentrations. This could be a regional phenomenon worth protecting." The meeting evolved into something bigger than a political debate. As Harold watched, his neighbors began organizing themselves, forming committees, sharing contact information. Sarah's fingers flew across her keyboard, connecting local efforts with online supporters. Mayor Thompson tried once more to regain control. "Any formal decisions will require proper procedures. Sometimes procedures need to catch up with what's right," Margaret declared to general applause. As the meeting wound down, Harold felt a familiar peace settle over him, the kind he usually only found in his fields at dawn. His father's words echoed in his memory. "The land knows how to give, son. Our job is just to listen and learn." Cedar Grove was learning, and somewhere in a corporate office, Agritech was about to learn too. Some things really were beyond packaging. Sarah found the map in the attic, tucked inside her grandfather's old steamer trunk between faded photographs and her grandmother's wedding dress. The yellowed paper crackled as she carefully unfolded it. A geological survey map dated 1963, the year her great-grandfather bought the farm. "Grandpa!" she called down the stairs. "You need to see this!" Harold climbed the attic stairs slowly, ducking under the low beams. When Sarah held out the map, his hands trembled slightly as he took it. "Your father had this all along," Sarah said softly. "Look at the markings." The map showed Cedar Grove and the surrounding farmland, but with careful annotations in Harold's. Father's distinctive handwriting. The North Field was circled in red, with notes about mineral deposits and soil composition. More circles marked other farms in the valley, with percentage numbers that meant nothing to Harold, but made Sarah's eyes widen. He knew, Harold whispered, all those years of telling me to farm gentle, to keep the soil pure. He traced the faded pencil marks with weathered fingers. Dr. Rodriguez arrived an hour later, examining the map with growing excitement. These numbers, they're mineral concentration estimates. Your father was tracking the deposits across the entire valley. But why keep it secret? Sarah wondered. Harold remembered his father's words about some secrets needing time to grow. He was protecting it from people like Agritech. The deposits form a pattern. Dr. Rodriguez pointed to the map. Your farm sits at the heart of it, but traces extend throughout the valley. Your father must have discovered this during the initial land survey. Sarah was already on her laptop, cross-referencing the map's data with current geological surveys. The university's modern readings match almost exactly. Great-grandpa's measurements were incredible for his time. Harold thought about all the times his father had turned down offers for the land, about his insistence on natural farming methods. He wasn't just being old-fashioned, he was being careful. And he left us the map right when we needed it most, Sarah added. The timing. The land gives up its secrets in its own time, Harold quoted from memory. That's what he always said. Dr. Rodriguez studied the map's legend. With this evidence of the mineral deposit's extent, we can make a case for regional protected status. Agritech can't just buy up one farm. They'd need to convince the whole valley. Sarah was already sharing the discovery online, connecting with other farmers marked on the map. Messages poured in, old memories of Harold's father visiting their farms, teaching them about soil preservation, sharing his gentle farming techniques. He was building a network, Sarah realized, making sure the knowledge survived, even if the map stayed hidden. Harold sat in his father's old leather chair, the map spread across his lap. 60 years of secret stewardship, passed down through careful words and patient teaching. His father had given them more than land. He'd given them time for the world to learn what he had already known, that some things were worth protecting, worth preserving, worth the wait. Through the attic window, Harold could see his north field gleaming in the afternoon sun. The soil that had sustained his family for generations held more than minerals. It held his father's wisdom, his foresight, his deep understanding that some treasures needed to grow in their own time. Sarah squeezed his shoulder. We'll protect it, Grandpa, just like he did. Harold folded the map carefully, this piece of his father's legacy finally revealed. He used to say farming was about faith, in the land, in time, in what's right. And in family, Sarah added softly. Outside, the sun touched the tops of the cornstalks, painting them gold. Somewhere in the distance, a tractor hummed. One of their neighbors, working their piece of this precious valley. Harold thought of his father, young and determined, buying land that others overlooked, protecting a secret that would take generations to fully understand. Some things, it seemed, were worth the wait. The letter arrived by courier, unmarked except for Harold's name and address, typed in stark black letters. Inside, the message was equally simple. Reconsider our offer. Time is running out. Harold placed the letter on his kitchen table next to his morning coffee, watching Sarah photograph it for their growing digital archive of Agritech's pressure tactics. Over the past week, similar letters had arrived at farms throughout the valley. Anywhere his father's map had marked mineral deposits. They're getting desperate, Sarah said, uploading the image. Our live stream about the map reached over 100,000 viewers yesterday. People are starting to ask questions about Agritech's farming practices. A truck engine rumbled outside. Through the window, Harold watched Ted Morrison's vehicle pull up, followed by Dr. Rodriguez's university SUV. Their early morning arrivals had become routine since the map's discovery. Got trouble, Ted announced as he entered the kitchen. Someone broke into the Ag Extension office last night. Files missing. All the soil surveys from the past month. Dr. Rodriguez nodded grimly. Same at the university lab. Our latest analysis data gone. Backup files corrupted. Harold's coffee grew cold as they talked. Corporate sabotage dressed up as routine break-ins. The pattern was clear enough. They're trying to erase the evidence, Sarah said, her fingers flying across her laptop keyboard. Good thing we've been backing everything up on secure servers. A call from Margaret Chen added another piece to the puzzle. Harold, half my flower orders for next week just got cancelled. Corporate accounts. They all cited quality concerns. Same wording, different letterheads. Through the screen door, Harold could see dust rising on the road. More vehicles approaching. Claire Anderson's dairy truck, Bobby Chen's bakery van, other farmers from the valley, gathering as they had every morning this week. It's not just pressure anymore, Claire announced as the group assembled in Harold's kitchen. They're trying to break us one by one. My milk contract with the school district, suddenly under review. Bobby Chen slapped a letter on the table. Health inspectors coming to my bakery. Third surprise inspection this month. Harold studied the faces around his kitchen. Good people, honest people, all being squeezed by corporate forces they couldn't see but could certainly feel. They think we'll crack, Ted said quietly. Give up our farms one by one until they control the whole valley. Sarah stood up from her laptop. But they don't understand what they're really fighting. This isn't just about land or minerals, it's about community. Through the window, Harold watched. More dust clouds approach, more neighbors, more friends. The kitchen grew crowded as people spilled onto the porch, sharing stories, comparing notes, building resolve. Dr. Rodriguez spread out her remaining research notes. The mineral deposits make this valley unique. If Agritech gains control, they'll exploit it until there's nothing left. Like they did in Harrison County, someone added. Bought up all the family farms. Now it's just corporate fields, far as the eye can see. Harold thought of his father's map, of the careful notes and patient planning. One man's wisdom now protecting an entire community. A sharp rap at the door silenced the room. Dennis Whitaker stood there, clipboard in hand, looking uncomfortable in his press shirt. Official notice, he said, not meeting Harold's eyes. All farms in the valley are due for comprehensive health and safety inspections. Starting tomorrow. Sarah was already recording. Under whose authority? New county regulations. Whitaker's voice was stiff. Very specific requirements about soil composition documentation and mineral content declarations. The room erupted in protests, but Harold held up his hand. In the sudden quiet, he faced Whitaker squarely. Tell your new friends at Agritech something. From me. Harold's voice was calm, but carried to every corner of the crowded kitchen. My father protected this valley for 60 years, taught us to farm it right. We're not about to stop now. Whitaker fled, but Harold knew this was just the beginning. Agritech would push harder. The pressure would grow. Looking around his kitchen, at the determined faces of his neighbors, Harold felt something stronger than worry. His father had spent a lifetime building this community, weaving it together through shared knowledge and mutual trust. Some things really were too precious for packaging, too strong for corporate pressure, too deep for any amount of money to buy. The Cedar Grove Farmers Coalition took shape in Harold's barn, where generations of wheelers had once stored their harvests. Now, laptops glowed alongside hay bales, and Sarah's live stream setup shared space with old farming tools. 37 signatures so far, Margaret announced, holding up the coalition agreement. Every farm marked on Harold's father's map, plus others who support traditional farming. The document was simple but powerful. By signing, farmers pledged to preserve their land's natural integrity and resist corporate acquisition attempts. More importantly, they agreed to stand together. If Agritech targeted one farm, they'd face them all. We've got legal support too, Claire Anderson added. My daughter's law firm in the city is handling our case pro bono. They're calling it an environmental preservation issue. Dr. Rodriguez spread out her latest findings on a folding table. The university's environmental science department is backing us. These mineral deposits aren't just rare, they're part of a unique ecological system. The whole valley qualifies for protected status. Harold watched young Bobby Chen typing furiously on his tablet. "Got the website up," Bobby announced. "People can track inspection results, corporate pressure tactics, everything. Total transparency." Sarah nodded approvingly. "Transparency is our best weapon. Agritech wants to operate in the shadows. We're going to shine a light on every move they make." The barn doors opened to admit Ted Morrison, looking grimmer than usual. "Just got word from my contact at the county office. Agritech's filed permits for soil testing every farm in the valley. They can't test private property without permission." Claire's lawyer daughter chimed in via video call. "We've already filed for temporary protective orders." Harold studied the coalition agreement, remembering his father's patient building of community ties. Now those connections were becoming formal, written down, strengthened by shared purpose. "There's something else," Ted continued. "Remember those missing soil samples? Found out where they went. Agritech's trying to patent the mineral composition." Stunned silence fell over the barn. Sarah was the first to recover, already pulling up patent law websites. "They can't patent naturally occurring minerals," she said firmly. "We've got documentation showing these deposits are completely natural." "Thanks to Harold's father's map," Margaret added. "He knew this day would come, knew we'd need proof." The meeting continued as sunset painted the barn walls golden. Plans were made, tasks distributed, communications channels established. Young farmers offered tech skills, older ones shared wisdom about the land. University students volunteered to monitor soil conditions. Local businesses pledged support. Harold sat on an old tractor seat, watching his community transform. The coalition was more than just a legal entity. It was his father's vision taking new shape for new times. Sarah approached with her laptop. "Look at this, Grandpa. People are sharing their own stories about fighting corporate takeovers. We're not alone." Messages poured in from across the country. Family farms facing similar pressures. Communities organizing their own coalitions. Environmental groups offering support. "Your father built something bigger than he knew," Margaret said softly to Harold. "He protected more than just the soil." As the meeting wound down, Harold stood to address the group. The setting sun through the barn's windows cast long shadows, reminiscent of earlier farmers gathering here in earlier times. "My father used to say farming was about faith," he began. "Faith in the land, in each other, in doing what's right. This coalition, it's that faith taking root, growing strong." He looked at the faces around him. Neighbors, friends, the next generation of farmers, all choosing to stand together. "Agritech thinks they're fighting for control of some minerals," he continued, "but we're fighting for something bigger, something that can't be bought or sold or patented." Sarah ended her live stream with a quiet click, but the energy in the barn remained electric with purpose. The Cedar Grove Farmers Coalition was more than just a response to corporate pressure. It was a declaration that some things were worth protecting together. Outside, the valley stretched away under the evening sky, its precious soil nurturing crops as it had for generations. The land's secrets were no longer hidden. They were guarded now by an alliance as deep as the roots of Harold's oldest trees. The new farmer's market permit application sat on Mayor Thompson's desk like a ticking clock. Harold could see it from where he stood, 20 coalition members behind him, their presence filling the mayor's office to bursting. "A cooperative market." The mayor tugged at his collar. "On private property, that's unusual. Completely legal, though," Sarah pointed out. "We've met every requirement. And since it's on coalition land, your packaging ordinance doesn't apply." The location they'd chosen was perfect. Claire Anderson's dairy farm, right off the main highway, where tourists could easily stop. More importantly, it was on land marked in Harold's father's map, part of the mineral-rich valley they were fighting to protect. "The environmental impact studies," the mayor began. Already completed, Dr. Rodriguez interrupted, dropping a thick folder on his desk. The university's findings suggest our traditional farming methods actually improve soil health. Bobby Chen stepped forward with his tablet. We've got over 5,000 signatures supporting the new market. Local news is covering the story. People want this. Harold watched the mayor's internal struggle play across his face. Agritech's influence pressed from one side, public opinion from the other. I'll need to review. Take your time, Harold said quietly. We'll wait. The mayor's eyes darted to his window, where more coalition supporters gathered on the street below. Sarah's live stream captured it all: the people, the papers, the pressure of community will against corporate power. Very well. The mayor's pen scratched across the permit. But any health violations won't happen, Margaret Chen assured him. We're setting standards higher than the county requires. Transparency at every level. Outside, the news spread quickly through the waiting crowd. Harold felt the surge of victory, but knew this was just the beginning. Agritech wouldn't take this lying down. Back at the farm that evening, the coalition gathered again. The barn had become their war room, with maps, charts, and computer screens tracking their progress. Market opens Saturday, Claire announced. Every farm represented, plus educational displays about our soil preservation methods. Sarah pointed to her social media metrics. We're trending nationally. Environmental groups are sending representatives. Even some celebrity chefs interested in our produce. Agritech's been quiet, Ted Morrison warned. Too quiet. They're planning something. As if on cue, Harold's phone rang. A private number. He put it on speaker. Mr. Wheeler. Jackson Hayes's smooth voice filled the barn. Congratulations on your new market permit. Very resourceful. State your business, Harold replied. Just wanted to ensure you understand the stakes. Patents are being filed. Regulations can change. Markets can fail. Sarah was already tracing the call, but Harold didn't need to know where Hayes was. The threat in his voice was clear enough. Anything else? Harold asked calmly. A pause. Consider. This a final opportunity, Mr. Wheeler. After Saturday, well, business is business. The call ended. The barn stayed quiet for a moment, determination settling like evening dew. They'll try to stop the market, Bobby said finally. We need security cameras, volunteers monitoring everything. Documentation, Sarah agreed. Every angle covered. Harold looked at his father's map, now framed on the barn wall. They think Saturday's their last chance to stop us. But it's really our first chance to show them what we're fighting for. The coalition worked late into the night, planning, preparing, strengthening their resolve. They knew Agritech would make a move. The question was no longer if, but when and how. As the others left, Harold walked his fields one last time. The soil under his feet held more than minerals now. It held the hopes of an entire community, the dreams of future farmers, the wisdom of generations. Saturday would change everything. But some changes were worth fighting for. Some things were worth protecting, no matter the cost. In the distance, lights burned in other farmhouses across the valley. The coalition standing guard, ready for whatever tomorrow might bring. The betrayal came not with a shout, but with a whisper. 2 days before the market opening, Sarah discovered the leaked documents on an agricultural industry website. Internal coalition communications, soil analysis data, and private strategy discussions. All traced back to one source, Dennis Whitaker, she said, her voice tight as she showed Harold her laptop screen. He's been working for Agritech all along, even before the market ban. Harold sat heavily in his kitchen chair, reading emails that revealed months of corporate collusion. The health inspector hadn't just been following orders, he'd helped design the packaging regulations specifically to pressure valley farmers. There's more, Sarah continued, scrolling through files. He's been feeding them information about every farm in the coalition. Soil compositions, financial pressures, which farmers might be vulnerable to buyouts. The kitchen filled quickly as coalition members arrived, word spreading faster than morning frost. Margaret Chen gripped the back of a chair, her knuckles white. All those surprise inspections, she said. He was mapping our weaknesses. Ted Morrison burst in, waving a paper. Just got this from the county office. Agritech's filed for emergency injunctions against every farm in the valley. Claims we're violating patent-pending mineral rights. But the patents haven't been granted, Claire protested. Doesn't matter, Ted replied grimly. The legal battle will drain our resources. They're trying to break us before Saturday. Harold studied the faces around him. Angry, hurt, but not defeated. Whitaker's betrayal cut deep, but it had revealed Agritech's true nature to anyone who still doubted. Sarah's phone buzzed. Dr. Rodriguez says the university's legal team is reviewing the injunctions. They're prepared to file countersuits. And look at social media, Bobby added, holding up his tablet. Whitaker's leak is backfiring. People are furious about corporate manipulation of local government. A truck door slammed outside. Through the window, Harold saw Dennis Whitaker, himself approaching the house, clipboard in hand. The kitchen fell silent. Mr. Wheeler, Whitaker called through the screen door, his voice faltering as he saw the crowded kitchen. I have some inspection forms. Come in, Dennis, Harold said quietly. Time we had an honest conversation. Whitaker stepped inside, his pressed shirt wrinkled with nervous sweat. This isn't personal, he began. It's just business. Business? Margaret's voice could have frozen summer wheat. You sold out your neighbors, people who trusted you. Agritech is the future, Whitaker insisted. Fighting them will only hurt the community in the long run. I was trying to make the transition easier. By betraying us? Sarah's fingers flew across her keyboard. Everything you've done is being live-streamed right now. 20,000 people watching. Whitaker's face paled. You don't understand. They made promises. We understand plenty, Harold interrupted, standing slowly. My father understood too. That's why he protected this valley, not just from corporate greed, but from people who'd sell their souls for a piece of it. Through the window, more coalition members were arriving. The kitchen crowd spilled onto the porch, faces set with resolve rather than rage. Your inspection days are over, Ted announced. County's launching an ethics investigation. Seems working. Secretly for Agritech while serving as a health inspector is a conflict of interest. Whitaker backed toward the door. You're making a mistake. Agritech can't be stopped. The market opens Saturday, Harold said firmly. And now, thanks to you, everyone knows exactly why it matters. After Whitaker fled, the coalition stayed, planning long into the evening. His betrayal had wounded them, but like ancient trees after a storm, they stood stronger for weathering it. He thought he'd break us, Sarah said, updating their security protocols. Instead, he gave us proof of everything we've been fighting against. Harold touched the worn wood of his father's sign above the sink. The old man had known, had always known, that the valley's greatest strength wasn't in its soil alone, but in the people who worked it, who believed in it, who would stand together to protect it. Saturday was coming, and now they were ready. Dr. Rodriguez burst into Harold's kitchen just after sunrise, clutching a stack of research papers and wearing yesterday's clothes. Her eyes were bright with the fevered excitement of scientific discovery. We've done it, she announced to Harold and Sarah, who were reviewing market preparations over coffee. The final analysis confirms everything. This isn't just about rare minerals. It's about how they interact with traditional farming methods. She spread papers across the kitchen table, pushing aside market plans. The mineral composition in your soil creates a natural regenerative system. The more you farm it traditionally, the more it enhances itself. Sarah leaned forward, scanning the data. You mean the minerals actually respond to natural farming? Exactly. Elena pointed to a chart. Chemical fertilizers disrupt the process, but traditional methods, crop rotation, natural composting, gentle tilling, they activate these minerals. They become more concentrated, more effective. Harold thought of his father's patient instruction. Let the land tell you what it needs. That's why he was so strict about farming methods. Your father understood intuitively what we've just proven scientifically, Elena continued. These minerals don't just make plants grow better, they create a self-sustaining ecosystem that could revolutionize organic farming worldwide. The kitchen door opened as Ted Morrison arrived with more coalition members. They gathered around the table as Elena explained her findings. The implications are staggering, she concluded. If we can protect this valley, study these processes, we could help farmers everywhere transition back to sustainable methods. But if agritech gets control, Sarah began. They'll destroy it, Ted finished. Their industrial methods would break the mineral cycle within a season. Harold stood by his sink, looking out at fields his family had tended for 3 generations. All those years of careful farming hadn't just preserved the minerals. They'd helped them thrive, grow stronger, work in harmony with the land. Sarah was already sharing the research online, connecting with environmental scientists worldwide. Universities are requesting access to study our farming methods. Agricultural institutes want to send researchers. The paper's been fast-tracked for peer review, Elena added. The entire scientific community is paying attention now. Bobby Chen rushed in, tablet raised triumphantly. You're all going to want to see this. Agritech stock is dropping. Their investors are asking questions about sustainable farming practices. The news kept flowing in. Environmental protection agencies expressing interest, sustainable agriculture organizations offering support, media requests for interviews about traditional farming methods. This changes everything, Ted said, reviewing Elena's data. Agritech can't fight global scientific consensus, but Harold knew better. They'll fight harder now, he warned. This knowledge makes the valley even more valuable. As if to confirm his words, a sleek corporate car pulled into his driveway. Jackson Hayes emerged, looking less polished than during his helicopter arrival. Mr. Wheeler, he called through the screen door. We should talk about collaboration. Agritech is very interested in sustainable farming research. Interesting timing, Sarah remarked loudly, her live stream already running. Right after Dr. Rodriguez's breakthrough. Hayes straightened his tie. We're prepared to be very generous. Joint research projects, shared patents, profit-sharing arrangements. Still trying to buy what can't be sold, Harold said quietly. The answer's still no. Think about the shareholders, Hayes pressed. The quarterly reports. We're thinking about the land, Harold replied. About farmers everywhere who need what we've learned here. About doing what's right instead of what's profitable. Hayes's corporate mask cracked slightly. This isn't over, Mr. Wheeler. Saturday's market will proceed as planned, Elena interrupted, with full university oversight and environmental monitoring. After Hayes left, the coalition members shared knowing looks. Agritech was desperate now, which made them dangerous, but they had something more powerful than corporate influence. They had science confirming what Harold's father had known all along, that the land, when respected and treated right, had secrets worth protecting. Your father would be proud, Elena told Harold softly. He protected this discovery until the world was ready to understand it. Harold touched the soil analysis papers gently. He always said farming was about patience, about trusting the land to show us the way. Now the land had spoken, not just through tradition and instinct, but through charts and data and peer-reviewed research. The truth was out, and not even Agritech could bury it again. The legal brief landed on Agritech's corporate desk like a bombshell. Drafted by Claire's lawyer daughter and backed by the university's legal team, it was a masterpiece of environmental protection law. They can't claim mineral rights, Sarah explained to the coalition members gathered in the barn, because our traditional farming methods are scientifically proven to create and sustain those minerals. The land and the farming practices are inseparable. Ted Morrison grinned as he read through the document, and since Harold's father's map proves these methods have been in use for 60 years, we have prior claim, Claire finished. Agritech's patent applications are invalid. The barn had transformed into a command center. University researchers worked alongside farmers, documenting traditional techniques that had seemed outdated just weeks ago. Every practice Harold's father had taught him was being validated, recorded, protected. The fundraising campaign just passed $100,000, Bobby announced from his laptop. Small farmers nationwide are contributing. They want to help fight agritech. Margaret Chen arrived with news from town. Chamber of Commerce voted to officially support the coalition. They've seen the tourism projections for sustainable agriculture research. It's better than anything agritech promised. Harold watched it all from his father's old tractor seat, now stationed beside Sarah's modern computer setup. The contrast felt right somehow. Old wisdom meeting new methods, tradition finding fresh purpose. Mayor Thompson's office called, Sarah said, checking her phone. He wants to make a public statement supporting the coalition. Seems the political winds have shifted. Speaking of winds shifting, Ted added, 3 agritech investors have contacted us. They're interested in sustainable farming partnerships without Hayes's involvement. The barn doors opened to admit Dr. Rodriguez and her research team. Their excitement was palpable. The peer review is complete, she announced. Our paper on the valley's regenerative mineral properties has been fast-tracked for publication. The scientific community is calling it a breakthrough in sustainable agriculture. Harold thought of his father's quiet confidence, his patient insistence on farming methods that others had mocked as backward. The old man had known they'd need more than tradition to fight the future's battles. "We've got company," Bobby called from his lookout position. Agritech's corporate cars were rolling up the driveway, a fleet of them this time. "Live in 3, 2, 1. Sarah's stream began broadcasting as Hayes and his lawyers approached the barn. "Mr. Wheeler," Hayes called out, his corporate smile strained. "Your legal maneuver is impressive. Perhaps we could discuss a compromise." "Nothing to compromise," Harold replied. "The valley's not for sale. Not in pieces, not as a whole." "The mineral patents were never yours to claim," Dr. Rodriguez interrupted. "The scientific evidence is clear. These properties exist because of traditional farming methods, not in spite of them." Hayes's lawyers huddled, whispering urgently. The corporate giant was facing something it hadn't expected. A community armed with science, law, and unwavering purpose. "Think about the shareholders," Hayes tried one last time. "We are," Sarah responded. "Every farmer in this valley is a shareholder in something bigger than quarterly profits, something that can't be bought or sold." The coalition members stood firm, farmers and scientists side by side. Hayes looked at their united front and, for the first time, seemed to understand what he was really fighting. After the corporate cars retreated, Elena approached Harold with a document. "The university wants to establish a permanent research center here, study traditional farming methods, train new farmers. Would you be interested in leading the practical instruction?" Harold smiled, remembering his father teaching him to read the land's needs. "Might need some help with the technical side." "That's what I'm here for, Grandpa," Sarah said, squeezing his shoulder. The afternoon sun slanted through the barn's open doors, catching the dust motes in bars of golden light. Outside, the valley stretched away green and vital, its precious soil nurturing crops as it had for generations. They had done more than stop agritech. They had proven that progress didn't have to mean destroying tradition, that sometimes the oldest wisdom could light the way forward. Saturday's market would just be the beginning. The new market charter hung proudly at the entrance of Claire Anderson's farm, its fresh ink declaring the establishment of Cedar Grove Valley's agricultural heritage market. Harold adjusted his father's old Wheeler Family Farms sign beneath. It now accompanied by a plaque explaining the historical significance of their traditional farming methods. "First customers arrive in an hour," Sarah announced, directing volunteers who were setting up educational displays about the valley's special soil. University students arranged interactive demonstrations showing how the minerals interacted with traditional farming techniques. "Tour groups are already waiting," Bobby Chen called from the parking area. "We've got 3 busloads of agricultural students and a delegation from the State Environmental Protection Agency." The market had become more than just a place to sell, produce. Each booth featured information about sustainable farming alongside its fruits and vegetables. Margaret's flower stand included displays about natural pest control. Claire's dairy section demonstrated traditional grazing methods that enhanced soil health. Dr. Rodriguez had set up a research kiosk where visitors could learn about the valley's unique mineral properties. "We're getting inquiries from universities worldwide," she told Harold. "Your father's methods are revolutionizing agricultural science." The morning sun caught the dew on Harold's vegetables, arranged naturally in his wooden crates. No plastic wrap in sight. The new market charter specifically protected traditional presentation methods, now recognized as part of their agricultural heritage. "Look who's here," Sarah nudged Harold, pointing to a familiar figure approaching through the morning mist. Dennis Whitaker walked hesitantly toward them, no clipboard in sight, wearing casual clothes instead of his inspector's outfit. "Mr. Wheeler," he said quietly, "I wanted to. That is, I need to." "Grab an apron," Harold interrupted, gesturing to the booth. "Lots of customers coming. Could use an extra hand." Whitaker blinked in surprise. "After everything I did?" "Land teaches forgiveness too," Harold said simply. "My father always said there was room for everyone who wanted to learn." The former inspector's eyes welled up as Margaret handed him an apron. Redemption, like farming, was about growth and patience. Ted Morrison arrived with news from the county agricultural office. "First round of Heritage Zone grants are approved. Every farm in the valley can get funding to maintain traditional methods. And the social media numbers are incredible," Bobby added, checking his tablet. "Our sustainable farming videos have gone viral. People want to know more about traditional techniques." Harold watched the market come to life around him. Young farmers eagerly learned from older ones. Scientists worked alongside gardeners. Children played in a demonstration plot where they could feel the difference between mineral-rich and regular soil. The mayor arrived as the first customers began streaming in. "Harold, the town council wants to establish an annual festival celebrating our agricultural heritage. Would you consider being the first Grand Marshal?" Before Harold could answer, a sleek corporate car pulled up. But instead of Hayes, Agritech's board chairwoman emerged. "Mr. Wheeler," she said warmly, "I wanted to see this market for myself and to officially announce Agritech's new Sustainable Agriculture Initiative. With your permission, we'd like to send our researchers to learn from your methods." "Knowledge wants to be shared," Harold replied, remembering his father's words. "That's why we protected it." Sarah was already discussing collaboration possibilities, her vision of traditional wisdom meeting modern technology in service of the land. The chairwoman looked around at the thriving market with new understanding in her eyes. "We were wrong to try to own this," she admitted. "Some things work better when they're shared." As the morning progressed, Harold took a moment to stand in the middle of it all. The market hummed with life and purpose. Farmers who had once feared obsolescence now taught eager students about soil health and natural farming cycles. His father's methods, once mocked as outdated, were being studied by scientists from around the world. The land had taught them all something about patience, about wisdom, about the strength of things that couldn't be packaged or patented, about the power of a community that chose to protect what mattered. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new lessons, new growth. But today, watching his neighbors share their knowledge and their harvest, Harold knew that some victories were measured not in profits, but in wisdom preserved and traditions renewed. Some things really were worth the wait. 1 year after the market's opening, Cedar Grove Valley had become unrecognizable, not from development, but from transformation. The university's new Agricultural Heritage Research Center stood on land donated by the coalition. its modern buildings designed to complement the traditional barns around it. Harold watched from his porch as Sarah led another group of student farmers through his north field. She had taken charge of the practical education program, teaching new generations the wisdom her great-grandfather had preserved. "Feel the soil structure," she instructed, her students kneeling in the rich earth. "This is what 60 years of traditional farming creates. You can't rush this kind of wisdom." Dr. Rodriguez emerged from her research station at the edge of the field. "The mineral activation rates continue to improve," she reported, joining Harold on the porch. "Other valleys are showing similar potential, just as your father's map suggested." The partnership agreement with the university had exceeded everyone's expectations. Traditional farming methods were being validated scientifically, while new understanding helped farmers apply old wisdom more effectively. "Grandpa," Sarah called out, "tell them about the flood." Harold walked to the field, his steps sure despite his years. The students gathered around as he described how the land's natural wisdom had protected their crops when modern methods failed. "But that's not the real story," he added. "The real story is about listening to the land, to each other, to the wisdom passed down through generations." A familiar truck pulled up. Dennis Whitaker, now the coalition's outreach coordinator. His transformation had been as remarkable as the valleys. After his public apology, he dedicated himself to helping other communities protect their agricultural heritage. "3 more counties want to establish heritage zones," he announced. "They've seen what we've accomplished here." The valley had become a model for sustainable agriculture nationwide. Young farmers arrived daily to learn traditional methods. Agricultural institutes sent researchers. Even Agritech had established a sustainable farming division with Cedar Grove as its learning center. Margaret Chen's daughter had opened a farm-to-table restaurant in town, showcasing the valley's produce. Bobby Chen's technology hub helped farmers worldwide connect and share traditional wisdom. Claire Anderson's dairy had become a demonstration site for sustainable grazing practices. "Your father would be proud," Dr. Rodriguez told Harold as they watched the students practice gentle tilling techniques. "His vision has grown beyond anything he could have imagined." Harold touched the soil, feeling its vitality. He knew, maybe not the details, but he knew this land had something to teach us. That's why he protected it. Sarah gathered her students for the next lesson. Many were from corporate farming backgrounds, drawn by the valley's success story. They'd arrived, skeptical of traditional methods, but were transformed by experiencing the results firsthand. "The minerals are just part of it," Sarah explained. "The real magic is in the relationship between farmer and land, the understanding that grows over generations." A group of international agricultural officials toured the research center, led by Ted Morrison. The valley's methods were being adapted for different climates and conditions worldwide. Harold's father's careful notes were being translated into multiple languages. The afternoon sun painted the valley golden as Harold walked his fields one last time that day. The soil that had caused so much conflict now nurtured hope for the future of farming. His father's secret had become a gift to the world. Back home, Sarah showed him plans for expanding the educational program. "We're calling it the Wheeler Institute for Sustainable Agriculture," she said proudly, honoring 4 generations of wisdom. Harold smiled, remembering his father's words about secrets needing time to grow. The land had kept its wisdom safe until the world was ready to understand. Now that wisdom was transforming agriculture in ways even Agritech hadn't imagined, some transformations couldn't be forced or bought. They had to grow naturally, like crops in good soil, nurtured by understanding and patience. The valley had taught them all that lesson well. The Autumn Harvest Festival brought the whole valley together, tables groaning with food grown in mineral-rich soil, children playing among educational displays, and farmers from across the country sharing wisdom, old and new. Harold sat in a place of honor, watching 3 generations work together at the Wheeler family booth. Sarah's daughter Rachel, named for her mother, carefully arranged heirloom tomatoes just as Harold had taught her. At 7, she already showed the family's intuition for farming, able to tell by touch when vegetables were perfectly ripe. Great-great-grandpa's sign needs polishing, Rachel announced, pointing to the weathered wood above their booth. The story's wearing off. That's why we tell it, Harold replied, pulling her onto his lap, so it never wears away. The festival had drawn thousands this year. Dr. Rodriguez's research center offered tours showing how traditional methods were being integrated with modern understanding. The Wheeler Institute graduated its largest class of sustainable farming students yet. Even Agritech had a booth, showcasing their new line of farming equipment designed to work with natural soil systems instead of against them. Margaret Chen's flower beds bordered the festival grounds, their blooms proof that beauty and science could flourish together. Her son Bobby's technology hub helped farmers worldwide share knowledge that might otherwise have been lost. Dennis Whitaker, grey now but energetic, led groups of corporate farmers through demonstrations of gentle tilling methods. "Tell me about the helicopters again," Rachel begged, eyes bright with a story she'd heard countless times. Before Harold could begin, Sarah called everyone together for the ceremony. As Grand Marshal, Harold was expected to speak. He stood slowly, looking out at faces old and young, local and distant, all drawn together by the wisdom of the land. "My father wrote something in his journal the day he bought this farm," Harold began. He wrote, "The soil tells stories to those who listen about what it needs, what it can give, what it must protect. He knew this valley had something to teach us, something worth protecting." He touched the worn wood of the market booth, remembering that first painful ban, the helicopters, the fight that had seemed impossible to win. But the real story isn't about minerals or markets or methods. It's about listening to the land, to each other, to the wisdom passed down through generations, about protecting what matters, not because it's profitable, but because it's right. Rachel slipped her small hand into his as the evening sun painted the valley in shades of gold and amber. The land that had caused so much conflict now nurtured hope for farming's future. His father's secret had become a gift to the world. Some things really were beyond packaging. Some wisdom needed time to grow. Some stories, like the soil itself, only grew richer with each passing season. The land had taught them all that lesson well.